All right, so we are on the air, so we can start recording in 3, 2, 1, go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 16th installment of the Dynasty Wall Street podcast. I am your host, Kevin Cotillo, and I have with me John Bosch and Riley Bymaster. John, what's going on? How are you?
I am doing well. I'm looking forward to tonight's show. It's going to be a little bit different than what we've done for the first 15 episodes. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes. A little bit different from us.
Yeah, we're going to do something a little different. We'll get into that in a minute. Riley, how are you tonight? We have football coming this week. We are one day away. Are you excited?
I am excited. A little worried about my finance exam tomorrow morning, but it is what it is. Once I get that done, football is tomorrow night.
Just write on your exam. Win your leagues, and you will profit. That's the only financing you need to know, right?
Tevin Coleman, 14 fantasy points. Oh yeah, I got it down.
Throw down some Dynasty Trade Calculator values on your worksheet, and you'll be good to go.
I did that last time. It didn't work out.
It didn't work out. All right, so
my equations were off.
We talked about it a little bit already. We are going to do things a little bit differently. Normally, we give you some players and their values and some comps, but we're going to do, in light of the season kicking off this week, we're going to do it a little bit differently. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to talk about some players. We're going to talk about where their value is right now, but we're going to look ahead to a year from now after the 2018 fantasy football season plays out, and we're going to talk about where we think their values are going. And the comparable players that we're going to use this time are the players that are currently at the spot where we think these players will end up. So, for example, if we think that Mike Evans is the wide receiver 5, and we're going to talk about Corey Davis and maybe comp them, we're basically saying that Corey Davis is going to be the wide receiver 5 or in that general range next year if we're comparing him to Mike Evans. Does that make sense? Have I just described that correctly, John?
I was just going to say, I don't know how much we want to talk about ADP here. I think we want to steer clear of ADP in this conversation.
Well, how would you...
The DTC value.
All right, I'll go back.
We are cutting this.
I was trying to give an example, and I didn't have those guys up, so obviously we're going to cut all this.
I wouldn't even. I don't know that you need to really give an example. I guess you could, but I definitely think if we're going to do an example, we need to stick to DTC value because that's the brand here.
All right, so let me start that over. All right, like we said, we are going to do things a little bit differently tonight. So what we're going to do tonight is we are going to talk about a player and where they are currently valued on the Dynasty Trade Calculator, which you can find on dynastytradecalculator.com. And we are going to compare them to players where we think that are currently valued at where we think they'll end up. I know that can be a little confusing, but for example, if we're going to talk about Corey Davis, who has a 27.4 value in the Dynasty Trade Calculator, and we're going to compare him to where we think he's going to end up in 2019. So we're after the 2018 season plays out, we think that he'll end up in a place like Mike Evans is currently. Mike Evans currently has a 41.9 value. So basically, when we're talking about these guys, we're saying that we think that Corey Davis is going to increase in value from a 27.4 to a 41.9. That's basically how we're going to go through this episode. Does that make sense, John? Have I done a good job at describing it?
Yeah, I think that's what we're all on board with to do tonight. We're going to see how it goes. Hopefully none of us mess it up royally.
All right, and we're going to start with Riley, who we expect to mess it up royally, so we figure we get it out of the way quickly. He's going to start us off with quarterbacks. Go ahead, Riley.
I couldn't agree more. So yeah, I'm obviously bringing a riser and a faller. We'll start with we'll go bad news first. We'll start with my faller. Coming in on the calculator at a 26.7 value. He's had one career NFL start. Patrick Mahomes. I don't know. It's already inflated, and we haven't even seen him for half a season, let alone a full season. Already up there with these elite, quarterbacks like Matthew Stafford. He's right there in that range. By the time 2018 ends and by the time 2019 begins, I see him having a Dak Prescott-like value right at 20.3, according to the Dynasty Trade Calculator. He has the weapons, but I just don't know if his game has progressed there yet to where we can anoint him a top a QB1, in fantasy leagues. So I could definitely see him falling, even if he has a good season. I just don't think he's going to live up to expectations. I'm curious what you guys think about that. I know I'm not on board yet.
Yeah, I can see how that could play out. I think the comparison to Dak is actually a very good one because Dak had that nice rise after his first year, came in, second year, did not live up to those expectations. Now, I mean, Mahomes didn't even show as much in his first year as obviously as Dak did. So those expectations are not based on as much fact. And if he has a slump in his second year like Dak did, I think his value is definitely going to drop back down. He's going to be way cheaper next year at this time. I think you're right on there, Riley.
Thank you. Kevin?
I'm actually a little surprised when you mentioned Dak Prescott. I was kind of surprised to hear that his value's that much lower than Mahomes. And I mean, I guess I get it. People are really high on Mahomes right now. They, expect a lot from him. We've talked about him on recent episodes, Riley, where you even said like you love the tools, but you don't know what you're going to get out of him. And I completely agree with you. I think it's going to be an up and down season for Mahomes. I think that the Kansas City offense as a whole, people are expecting a lot out of them, and I could see that not living up to expectations. I think, we all know Kareem Hunt's going to eat because he could get, close to 300 carries this year. So I think that's solid. But with all the weapons in that offense that they have, you guys know how I feel about Sammy Watkins. I'm not a huge Sammy fan. I think Tyreek Hill is a specialist is how I would word him. At least that's how I feel. And those two guys could cancel each other out a little bit. Kelsey is a top-tier tight end, no question. But I don't know that I see Mahomes putting up the kind of stats that ultimately would lead to an increase in value for him. So I think you're right. I think it's stagnant or a slight decrease, which would put him in that Dak level. And I would expect, by the way, even with the wide receivers, as terrible as they are in Dallas, I think Dak ends up next year higher than Mahomes.
Oh, that's the first time I've ever heard that take this offseason. I mean, I could see it. I think both of these offenses are really going to rely on the run game. Kareem Hunt and Zeke are just going to, tear it up this year, like you said. So it'll be interesting. I don't think Mahomes is going to throw for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. I think he's going to be a 25 and 19 guy. But we'll see. I definitely expect him to fall. So unless you guys have any final thoughts on those two, I'll move to my riser. And in this case, it is the guy who poses shirtless with tigers in pictures, Mr. Baker Mayfield. Already at a 21.9 value in the calculator. At some point, you think he's going to get starts this year because Hugh can't make up his mind. And after that, obviously, he's shown us this preseason he can ball out. Skill set fits his weapons. I think he's going to be fantastic. And definitely could have a Jared Goff-like ascension after his first year. So Goff comes in at a 28.5 value, which is obviously up into that low-end QB1 range. And even if Baker doesn't get a full season, I definitely see his value just climbing throughout, building hype for year two. I can't remember who started last time. So one of you guys take it away. What do you think of Baker climbing up to that range?
I'll jump in. I definitely think he climbs up to the range. I think Baker's value next year at this time, whether he starts or not, I think the floor value is what Mahomes currently is, to be honest. I mean, all he has to do is get the starting job next year. Doesn't even have to play a game this year. Tyrod could play all 16 games. I don't see that happening. But Baker comes in next year. He's going to have all that hype of this is the year he's taking over this offense. No matter what, I think his floor value is what Mahomes currently is, just because of that same hype factor reason. What about you, Kevin?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. I think that I'm stuck on this one.
I mean, literally the worst thing that could happen to Baker Mayfield is he plays all season and looks terrible. It's not like he's still not going to be the quarterback of the future next year.
Like Jared Goff.
Exactly. Like he could play and have a bad rookie year like Goff, and he's still going to be compared to, all right, now this is his second year. This is the year. That value is going to be there next year no matter what.
So, but what did we just say Mahomes' value was?
27.
26.7.
26.7. So yeah, I guess when you look at it from that perspective, I think the worst, you're right. The worst thing that can happen is he could come in and look terrible and then people will compare him to Mahomes. I was thinking more along the lines of he doesn't get to start at all somehow, which I think is probably even less likely than him playing terrible.
I think that's good for him though. If he shows nothing, he's going to increase in value.
Yeah, and then I'm looking at it, and then he'd end up where Mahomes is. It's just 26.7. So there's still an increase in value there, as slight as it might be. So I guess you're right. Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I guess he will increase in value.
If he comes in and plays a little bit and looks good, the sky's the limit. People will go crazy.
That value will shoot into the 30s easily, no question about it.
And before we get off quarterback, just straight up, would you guys rather have Baker Mayfield or Patrick Mahomes? Because lately, I'm kind of thinking I'd rather have Baker. I've seen already more out of Baker than I've seen out of Mahomes at the NFL level. I think there's more room for Baker to grow. I don't think Mahomes is going to be a top 7 guy, but I think Baker could be that guy.
For me, it's not even a question. I'll take Baker. I honestly, I think that what concerns me the most about Baker Mayfield is that it's Cleveland, and we know that they're going to screw it up at some point. But Hugh Jackson's not going to be the coach there forever if he makes it through this season. So we have to hope that they're going to bring in a coach who knows how to work with a quarterback and can put an offensive game plan together. Josh McDaniels is the guy that comes to my mind because if I could see Baker Mayfield and Josh McDaniels paired up together for the next 10 years, I'd be pretty damn excited to have Baker Mayfield on any of my fantasy teams. So, I think I'd take Baker hands down.
It'd be a tough call to do straight up, just because I know that Mahomes is a year ahead of him already in his development. So it would be. I don't know that I would want to go. I would not want to go straight. If I had Mahomes, I would not trade straight up for Baker. But I would trade for Baker plus a little something and be okay with that as long as I wasn't in need of a starter this year. I think, that production you're going to get this year, to me, it's a value. Unless you're in a rebuild, then it's an easy choice to take Baker plus a little bit of something on the top. Otherwise, I think I might stick with Mahomes, see how it plays out. Maybe midway through the year, maybe my mind is completely different.
Here's a question for you, though. Do you think it's possible? So we know that we just talked about how if Baker comes in and has a, subpar season, a la Jared Goff, his value is probably still going to, remain the same.
It's not going to dip. There's no chance.
But Mahomes, even though he's a second-year player, is in the same position, right? So, but if he comes in and plays poorly,
people are going to hate him.
Yeah, people are going to hate him.
It's not fair.
It would dip down some, but he's not going to lose his job. So it might dip down like during the season while it's happening. It'll rise back up in the off season, I think.
I think that third year thing will haunt him going into the third year if he doesn't have a good second year. I think it will. I really think it will. You'll see.
I don't know. This is a lot like a rookie year for him because it's not like he led the team a lot last year.
It is, but I think people are going to fall back on, well, he had his whole rookie season to sit and learn. Why isn't he preprepared?
Well, Kevin, it's different once you get out there on the field. It's different than watching on the sidelines.
I'm not arguing that point.
I'm playing that. I'm playing that side of the argument.
Perceived value here. I just think that if he has a bad year, I can see a lot of people selling on him, which will ultimately hurt his value.
They could easily flip flop between now and next year. Baker could be right where Mahomes is, and Mahomes could be right where Baker is.
And with that, we move to running back.
All right. So running back, I actually wish we would have recorded a few nights ago when we started kicking around, or maybe this was just the today that I will start over here. This was a few days ago that I wanted to bring the running back, but all right, I'm gonna leave a pause and then I'll start over there. Sorry, Kevin. All right, for the running back, I actually wish we would have recorded this a few days ago. It would have sounded a lot better. But the running back that I am bringing is major topic of discussion right now, and it's Le'Veon Bell. And it's not just a matter of how much it's not a matter of will his value decrease by next year. I think that's pretty much obvious to everybody at this point. My biggest question is, how much is it going to decrease? I'm looking at these running backs. Le'Veon Bell comes in still at 43.4, still high up there in a running back value. I honestly think this time next year, I think he is down in the mid-20s. And mid-20s right there is a range where right now we are looking at Melvin Gordon, Joe Mixon, Devontae Freeman. I think this time next year, that's where Le'Veon Bell is sitting. I think he has jumped by multiple running backs. He's not going to be on the Steelers next year. We don't know if he's going to be on the Steelers next week, I guess, at this point, depending on when this recording comes out. As of now, that situation seems to be pretty up in the air. Next year, I think he's definitely somewhere else. And a change in situation, I think, can change the production. It's not going to change his talent. He's still very talented, but he's not going to have that protection of Ben Roethlisberger throwing to him and having Antonio Brown taking away a bunch of coverage, Juju Smith-Schuster taking away coverage. Pittsburgh's got weapons that a lot of other teams might not be able to provide for Le'Veon Bell. So I really do. I think his value almost cuts in half by this time next year. What do you think, Riley? I saw you with a fist pump when I said Le'Veon Bell's name. How far do you think he's going to fall?
Well, I was actually expecting James Conner, but I was getting excited when I heard Pittsburgh running back. No, I agree. I do think it's going to fall. The only situation that could happen that I think it won't fall is if somehow he makes his way to San Francisco, the godly landing spot. I don't think that's going to happen. But that's the only way it would not dip. But, you're right. If he lands in Indy or in New York with the Jets, it's not going to be the same. I mean, talent's going to be there, but it's going to be different. And it's hard to explain why. I could see him being a second or third round guy next year, especially with, he's had the drug thing. He's been dinged up a little bit multiple times over his career. So it's got to dip at some point. His production's got to fall and his value is going to fall with it. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
We've seen running backs hit a cliff before, and their value seems to decrease at a faster rate than any other position. When it starts to slip a little, like it just drops. What about you, Kevin? How are you feeling about Le'Veon Bell going into 2019?
I agree with you that we've seen running backs, plummet. I think so. As of this recording, we don't know exactly what's going to happen with him for this season, right? We don't know. He could miss 1 week. He could miss 10 weeks. There's been rumors about both, so we really don't know. He could show up.
What's the max? What's the max that he can miss and still have it count like as the year?
10's the max. You can miss 10 games and you can still get an accrued season for the purposes of the union and things like that. So he technically still has an accrued season. He would lose. I think I heard somewhere around $8 million if he sits out for 10 games. He's still going to make what's that? 6 million? Was he? What's his number? 14?
6 point something. It's 14 and a half, something like that.
Yeah. So he makes 6 million this year, and then he saves 10 games of, the whole idea is that he doesn't want to play because he knows that Pittsburgh's going to run him into the ground in their last season. And I don't blame him for that. So
if you're paying 14 million, you better.
So if he sits out for 10 games, I actually think that could help his value sustain a little bit because
you're probably right.
He's only 26 years old, so he'll be going into his 27-year-old season. He will have missed an entire season due to injury, basically, right? He will have missed almost a full season because he sat out. So if you're looking at the number of carries, which a lot of people do, you start looking at that total number of carries. He's nowhere near that threshold of where guys fall off. So if you're a team like San Francisco, for example, looking at a player who has that limited number of carries and you can get 3 years out of him and pay him, a heavily front-loaded contract like they've been doing, because now San Francisco's built to do that. I can see them signing him and really making that work. So for me, I think it's tied to whether how many games he misses this year and what his value does, because I think the guy's going to produce. I don't expect any drop off for the next couple of years. So I think whoever gets him next year, you're going to look at that situation and think, yeah, he can produce the same way he has been. So I don't know that you're cutting his value in half. And it sounds like, 43 is high anyway, right? He's obviously top tier. You're still talking about comparing him to guys like Gordon, Mixon, and Freeman, and those are still,
they're still valuable, still very valuable.
But I think he's probably going to lose some value, no question about that, because I think every running back loses value the older they get. It's just a couple of points in the trade calculator every year. It should be built in just because they're aging. So I see a little bit of a drop off, but I don't know if it's going to be off a cliff, and I don't know if it's going to be cut in half. He may fall out of the, the 40s and be outside of that top 5 area again. But I think that you're going to see him still be in the mid 30s, mid to low 30s, and still be a very valuable player.
All right. Well, with that, let's shift to the player that I have that I think is going to rise, because he starts in the low 30s. Right now, he's at 31.2 in the calculator. And this is Christian McCaffrey. This is my love. I love Christian McCaffrey. I think he definitely rises throughout this year. I know that, everybody's been talking about, we're just going to get him all these carries, and that's just training camp talk. But good Lord, Carolina needs it. Like, he has got to be a feature in their offense for them to have any kind of success. And I don't think he needs to get 25 rushes a game. God, no, that would absolutely kill him, and then his value would decrease a ton. But I think they're at least smart enough to use him appropriately. Get him some rushes, get him some nice little swing passes where he can be in the open field and run. And I think Christian McCaffrey is due for just a huge upswing in value. Like I said, currently sitting at 31.2. I don't think it's absurd that he gets into that low 40s range. Right now, Bell at 43 and Kamara at 42.6. On a little bit lower, you've got Fournette at 38.7. I don't see any reason why going into next year, McCaffrey wouldn't be valued in the same range as those guys are right now. We'll start with Kevin this time. Kevin, what are your thoughts on Christian McCaffrey?
I love me some CMC.
I know you do.
On a lot of my rosters, I love the guy, I love what
every league I don't have him. You have him. It's slightly frustrating.
I love what they've been doing with him in the preseason. Hopefully it's an indication of what they're going to do with him in the regular season. He's clearly getting more touches. He's getting goal line touches. I've seen him worked in at the goal line more, which I love. I think you're right. They need to start limiting Cam Newton and what he does, particularly down in that end of the field. I don't think they want him slamming into goal line defenses anymore, and they shouldn't. They should be using, Christian McCaffrey for that type of thing if they can, and he looked good doing it. So I think the touchdowns are going to go up this year. The touches are going to go up. He had 100 carries or so last year. I expect him to get high, 150, 175, somewhere in that range for carries. He's still a guy that could threaten to catch 100 passes. And so for me, the comp that I'm looking at for him to be next year would be the other guy that I think could do the 1,000 season, and that's David Johnson.
Yes,
so,
I even wanted to say I think Christian McCaffrey has a better shot at 1,000 than David Johnson.
So if I'm talking about that, then his value is a 45, I think for sure he can get there next year. Riley is shaking his head miserably, so I got to assume he disagrees.
A little bit, yeah.
All right, Riley, what do you got?
I mean, it's not Madden. I love you guys. You guys are fantastic, but you both are insane. It's not going to happen. I mean, I don't think McCaffrey sees over 150 carries. I don't think he's going to catch 100 passes. I don't think he's going to be Matt Forte from 2000.
That's the true upside of him. 100 catches is not out of the realm of possibilities.
Right. I see him finishing with 80.
Yeah. I think that's probably more realistic.
80 catches. He's not obviously going to have 9 or 10 touchdowns. He's not a 6'4" receiver.
You don't think total touchdowns? You don't think he gets?
Oh, sorry, receiving touchdowns.
Okay,
receiving.
Okay.
My bad. Sorry, I should have clarified.
Just want to make sure that was clear.
I don't know if his rushing efficiency is going to be what David Johnson's will. That's my concern. He could have 150 to 200 carries, but if he's only at that 3.8 range, I mean, that's what, 700 yards at most. So, I mean, yeah, obviously I think he could see 1,300 to 1,400 all-purpose yards easily. And add in the receptions, that's great, but not top 5 value. I don't see that.
How are you telling me that he can't? He has no chance of catching 100 balls when he had 80 in his rookie season.
I think DJ Moore is going to be involved a lot more as the underneath the short stuff. Like, here, take the screen and go. Like,
Riley, you are our player evaluator for the podcast. I've said that many times. I will ask you this: true or false? Christian McCaffrey is the best receiver on that team, outside of maybe Olsen, if you want to throw him in there.
He's better than Olsen at this point.
And I think he's better than Olsen at this point.
No, I agree. He is the best receiver on the team. But regardless of that,
throw it to him?
I know they're going to throw it to him, but they're going to get their first round receiver involved. Like, they spent a first round pick on DJ Moore. They're not just going to use him as a decoy.
You have been vocally against.
I hate DJ Moore. Of course. I hate DJ Moore, but they're going to use him. And they're going to use Devin Funchess too, who I think is soft and tall, and they spent a second rounder on him a couple years ago, but obviously they still feed him the ball. So it's not that I hate McCaffrey. I don't get he's the next DJ Love. Like, come on.
That's why I didn't go there, because I knew that was going to be the reaction. But I honestly do think his like the dream upside is that he could get the 1,000.
Well, of course. I mean, Noah Brown's dream upside is Allen Robinson, but
we're talking about guys that could rise. And I'm not. If he got 1,000, he would be rising above where I think. Like I said, I think he's going to rise to the low 40s. If he got 1,000, he'd be upper 40s in that trade calculator instantly.
If he gets 1,000, I will donate so much money to Fantasy Cares. I'm not going to put a number on it, but you know what? I'm going to donate so much.
All right.
He didn't put a number on it because he knows there is an outside chance it could happen. He doesn't.
I'm very capped in my.
He doesn't have to get to that for his value to rise up into the 40s. I mean, Fournette doesn't get that. Kamara didn't get that. He had a great season, and he's in the low 40s. So I think Christian McCaffrey can get into that low 40 value range easily this year.
You know that McCaffrey led the team in targets last year, right?
Greg Olsen was out. Devin Funchess was the only receiver.
I'm just saying, led the team in targets.
All right, let's move on. Let's get to speaking of receivers. Let's switch over to receivers.
All right, I am going to bring the wide receivers tonight, and I think we're going to start off with the guy that I think is going to increase in value. And Riley, I know that I've irritated you a little bit with the Christian McCaffrey talk here, so I'm going to bring you back.
Irritate me.
I'm going to bring you back on my side with this one, because I'm going to say that Cortland Sutton is the guy that I expect a huge increase from this year to next year. When you look at his value currently, he is a 15.4 in the calculator, which is super low. Obviously, we know that he's a little blocked right now in this offense with Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders still in there, but we've seen him get some looks in the preseason. I expect him to be on the field. He's going to be the third wide receiver there. I think that he'll get a decent amount of targets, and hopefully he can improve as the season goes on. But what I like about him the most is that next year, when the teams start to restructure their teams, I think we're going to see either Demaryius Thomas or Emmanuel Sanders or both not be with Denver anymore. And you're going to see that, Cortland Sutton has a direct path to be the guy in an offense that I think this year is probably going to be, a very solid offense. So projecting him to be a bigger part of an offense like that should be pretty easy. The guy that I'm going to compare him to right now is a guy that I mentioned earlier as a guy that I don't really like, but his value is really high. And this may be a little aggressive. It might be a little bit up there, but I'm going to compare him to Tyreek Hill. And the reason I'm doing that
Wow.
is because Tyreek Hill has a 29.9 value. And I think that it's very possible that we could see Cortland Sutton, if he starts to come on towards the end of the season this year, we could see him skyrocket in value as the other options in that offense leave. And that's really the case to be made there. It's not so much, we saw Corey Davis increase in value from year 1 to year 2. I think he's mid-20s at this point. And we've seen, so that's the floor, I think, right? Corey Davis didn't have a great rookie season, but he still increased in value. So I think you're starting with some baked in value for Cortland Sutton right there, right? Going from the 15s to the early to low 20s. If he does anything, and I expect him to do that towards the end of the season, that value is going to go up even higher. So Riley, I know Cortland Sutton's one of your boys, so we'll start with you. What do you think? Am I being too aggressive comparing him to a guy like Tyreek Hill?
No, not at all. You're back on my good list. So we made it this far. The only, I guess, reservation I have is obviously I don't think he's going to do a lot this year, but by the start of 2019, I don't know if his value is going to be there, because I think 2019 is his season to show everybody that he can do it. So by the start of next year, I don't know if it's going to be almost doubled, but definitely once we're halfway through 2019, it's going to be doubled for sure. I don't know why Tyreek's that high anyway, but I mean, I get it, he's explosive and everything, but Sutton is all around fantastic receiver. He's going to be a number 1 for many, many years.
All right, John, what do you think? You said wow when I said Tyreek Hill, so obviously I got to feel you think I'm being a little aggressive.
I think you are definitely being aggressive. And I like Cortland Sutton. Finally traded for him today in a league, actually. I think it's the first bit of Cortland Sutton I have on any of my teams. So I really do like him. And I mean, you're totally on point that no matter what happens with this year, his value is going to increase. I don't know that upper 20s feels right. That feels super aggressive. I mean, I think the mid 20s is attainable without really having to show much at all this year. So I think you're a little high, but hey, if there's an injury this year and he gets to go out and show it this year, then I think he definitely jumps up there. Right now, I went through the calculator trying to find some wide receivers that were in the mid 20s. T.Y. Hilton comes up at 24, and we all know he's a little bit low right now because, things aren't going great in Indianapolis. But I don't think that's out of the question at all. That going into next year, we view Cortland Sutton the same way that we would view T.Y. Hilton right now. That's how I think that's a safer value for me. I'm not going to expect upper 20s of Tyreek Hill. That seems high, but I'm glad that you're enthusiastic about it.
It is. The only second year wide receiver that I expect to be higher than that is Anthony Miller, right, Riley?
Correct. Hey, keep going up, Kevin. You're moving up.
The scale doesn't have an infinity sign, so
that's right.
Mine does.
All right. Let's keep moving along, and this next one kind of pains me a little bit because it is a guy that I've had on numerous rosters and that I've liked for a long time, and it's sad.
Moncrief cannot get any lower.
It's not Moncrief. It's I am sad to see this guy, in a situation where I think that he will, decrease significantly in value. But Doug Baldwin's the guy that I'm going to talk about right now, and his value currently is a 19.2. So he's kind of low as it is, given you're coming into the season with knee injuries. We know that Seattle is on the downswing, I think, as a team. At least I think so. Their defense has lost a lot of pieces. And in my mind, and maybe it's just because I hate Pete Carroll to begin with, but it sounds like he's kind of losing the roster a little bit. His message isn't getting through as much as it used to. So might be getting closer to a time for a change there. Russell Wilson's still great, and the offensive line should be better, and maybe they have a running game this year. I don't know, but the knee injury with Doug Baldwin worries me. He's 29 right now, which means he's going to be going into his 30 season, and we all know that players can't live past 30, right, in the NFL. So the value alone drops immediately when you get into the 30s. So And then, I think that he's good because of the knee injury this year. I think we're going to see him limited. I think he's going to have a down year, and he already had a down year last year. Last year, he would, first year in a while for the last 3 that he was under 1,000 yards. He only had the 8 touchdowns, which is good. But, just not the overall fantasy season that we expect out of him. Only had 75 receptions. His catch rate was down. Just overall, just not as good. And I can see him being limited this year and having another down season, and that will cause people to panic, and we can see his value drop as a result. The guy that I'm comparing him to is Michael Crabtree. It's pretty low. So this is another one where I may have gotten a little too aggressive, but Michael Crabtree comes down at a 7.5. Michael Crabtree is a 30-year-old receiver. He's switching teams. I'm not suggesting that Doug Baldwin will be switching teams, but it is possible if Seattle goes complete reboot, they could start sending pieces everywhere. So I think that you're going to see some value really, really start to drop for Doug Baldwin. So John, we'll start with you this time. I believe you're a big Baldwin fan, if I remember correctly. So is Crabtree a good comp?
I like Baldwin I'm not a big fan, but I'm not a hater. Like he's, I like having him on teams, but I don't mind trading him away. I'm kind of indifferent to Doug Baldwin. Again, I like your enthusiasm, we're going to call it. No, I think that's aggressive. When you said Baldwin, the first player that I looked up to see what his current value was Demaryius Thomas. I think going into next year, I think we could be looking at Doug Baldwin the way that we're looking at Demaryius Thomas right now. And he comes in at 14. So, I mean, it's still a 25% decrease, just about, losing a quarter of his value. I don't know that he's going to lose all the way down to 7 or 7.5 where Crabtree is. He would have to have a really bad injury-riddled season. And I think even if he had a season where it was a completely lost season, if he's still in Seattle, I know you mentioned maybe he's not, but if he's still in Seattle, he's still going to be that target for Russell Wilson. I mean, unless they draft a wide receiver that is expected to come in and start from day one, which is a rarity these days. I mean, very few rookie wide receivers come in and become the feature wide receiver. Seattle doesn't have other options, and I don't think they have the money really to go out and sign a bunch of free agents unless all of a sudden their cap situation has drastically changed. So I don't know that he's going to fall all the way down the Crabtree. I'm going to say that he ends up maybe 14 to 15 range and ends up being Demaryius Thomas next year. What about you, Riley?
Yeah, I've never really been a Baldwin guy. I love this call. I think we could see a very steep decline very, very quickly. Wasn't Jordy Nelson like a 3rd or 4th round startup pick 3 years ago?
His value,
he fell hard. And right now, I mean, look at Seattle. Their offensive line doesn't exist. They're going to be in negative game scripts from the first quarter on. So, I mean, they're going to throw the ball, but he's already battled injuries, kind of towards the end of last year.
Jordy's a good one. Injury for, a while, then goes to a new team. Yeah. Poof.
I think we could see a Jordy cliff. I think this is a cliff. If we've talked about one a night, I think Baldwin could be that guy. So
Jordy comes at a 3.8, by the way. So he's even lower than Crabtree.
Okay, maybe not a 3.8 value, but Jordy from at the beginning of last year, he's probably like an 8 or 9.
Probably around Crabtree where he is right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Crabtree's a good call. So yeah, I mean, I'm not on the Baldwin train. I think get out now. Actually, just wrote an article about changing of the guard at wide receiver, the next elite crop of receivers coming in. So this was weird how this lined up. That just hit me. But if you could give Baldwin for Cooper Kupp plus, I'm all about it. All about it. Even if the plus is like a 4th.
I would probably do it straight up because I like Cooper Kupp so much. So
yeah, I agree with you there. I would for sure take that deal. And I think, I just think Baldwin's going to be that guy that really, and Riley, to that point, obviously I'm assuming you can check out that article at dynastytradecalculator.com. So head over and search for Riley and you can find it. But to that point, given, the Cortland Suttons of the world and, the other rookie receivers that I like, Anthony Miller, Christian Kirk, these guys are going to come up, and their value increasing is going to decrease the value for Baldwin, because you're not going to be able to get those guys for Baldwin, so his value has to decrease as a result of what you could trade for him. Right. So, I think that's going to have some effect on it as well. So, all right. Unless you guys have anything else to talk about with Baldwin, I think we're done with wide receivers. And I didn't ask you to plan this, so we're going to do this a little bit off the cuff. But since we didn't do tight ends, I will start with you, Bosch, and we don't have to get into too much detail here. But give me a tight end that you think is going to increase in value next year.
A tight end that will increase. Okay. Let me see here. You're gonna have to cut out some stuff here because
Riley knows.
Okay, so even though we didn't talk about this, I'm gonna do this a little off the cuff, and we are gonna say, Riley, since we didn't plan tight ends, Riley, why don't you give me a tight end you think will increase in value?
Austin Seferian-Jenkins, Jacksonville Jaguars.
I'm
all aboard ASJ. I love him. I think Bortles is going to love him. He's athletic. His second chance is he's taken every bit of it and said thank you. And I think it's going to be awesome. I think he's going to be right around Trey Burton area. All right. I don't know what that is off the top of my head, but yeah,
I like it. I'm gonna take the other initialed tight end as my rising tight end, and this is a guy that I have on several teams because he's been so cheap and I love it. I'm going to go RSJ. Give me Ricky Seals-Jones. I want to see him have a nice year out there in Arizona. He is so cheap right now that going down would basically mean he's not playing next year. So if he shows any type of consistency this year, he's definitely going to rise up the ranks of tight ends. Tight end doesn't take much to jump into that tight end one range in value. It's kind of a wasteland, as Zach has sung about in the past. But I'm going to go with Ricky Seals-Jones as my rising tight end.
All right, then I will finish this off with a tight end that I think is going to lose in value. And for me, that's going to be Zach Ertz. I think that Zach Ertz is a guy that I expect to have a little bit of a down season this year. In fact, I know everyone's really high on the Philadelphia Eagles, but I think they're going to struggle a little bit more than people expect. They're already banged up coming into the season, and I think it's just going to be a rough Super Bowl hangover type of season for them. And I think Zach Ertz is a guy that can really see some of that, particularly because I do like Dallas Goedert, and I do think they'll try to get him involved in the offense a little bit more. And as you see his value and his role in the offense creep up towards the end of the season, you're going to see Ertz's value start to drop. He's at a 21.1 value in the calculator right now. So I think that can easily drop down into the mid to low teens. And I think that he's the guy that I would expect to have a drop. So,
all right, let's guess the values. What do you think he drops to? You said, what was it again?
He is currently at a 21.1.
And what do you think he could drop to?
So I could see him dropping, let's see. I could see him going down to Jimmy Graham's an 8.1, so probably higher than that. I'm going to say in the 12 to 14 range.
Okay, let's see. Let's think of a tight end, maybe like Njoku. Where's he? Oh, he's only at 10. I'm sorry, you're probably gonna have to do a lot of editing here.
That's all right.
I'm just trying to find a tight end
that's at the top. So
I'm trying to find a tight end that might be in that range. What is Burton at?
Burton's at 9.3.
God. And
Ingram,
what did you think he might
17?
Yeah, Ingram. That's such a. I mean, he only has to drop like 2 spots. So Ingram's a 17. So you think he falls somewhere? I mean, tight end.
I think he's going to be below. I think he'll end up being below Ingram, in value wise for sure. Okay. So I'll say, yeah, he'll end up, and maybe 15. We'll max him out at 15, but I'd say more likely in the 12 to 14 range is where I expect him to go.
Can I give some tight end fallers that we all agree on?
Sure.
Greg Olsen, Jordan Reed, Jimmy Graham, they're all going down.
Yeah, I think that's so. Austin Seferian-Jenkins is a 5.3. Riley, what do you think he gets to this time next year?
I think he doubles. I think he's at 10.6.
10.6. Wow. Just based on the value of tight end given in the calculator, Trey Burton currently a 9.3. I don't know that ASJ is ever going to exceed what people are thinking right now of Trey Burton. For RSJ, God, I wanted to say that he goes up to it like an 8, but that's Jimmy Graham, Greg Olson range, because I wanted to say he doubles too. I think I'll be conservative. I'm going to go 7.5.
Wait, if he doubles, doesn't that mean he just goes from like 1 to 2?
No, he's a 4 right now, which
he's a 4. Oh,
yeah, I was rather surprised that he was all the way up to a 4.
I could see
he really felt free.
I could see him being in the George Kittle range of a 7.0. So I'm with you there. That's about where I'd be comfortable with him.
Yeah, which is right at that back end of the tight end ones in that area. So, all right, somebody's going to have to keep track of all this scoring, and next year when we do this episode, we're going to have to do a little review first to see who won.
We will definitely check that out. And we just want to thank everyone for listening to this episode of the Dynasty Wall Street podcast. We want to remind you to rate and review us. We are on the Dynasty Trade Calculator feed, so you're going to have to make sure you tell them that you love Dynasty Wall Street when you do write a review. And you can follow us all on Twitter. You can follow the show at Dynasty Wall Street. That's ST for Street. And
thank you for joining our Sunday Swim League, everybody.
Yeah. You can follow Riley as at DTC underscore Riley B. You can follow John as at John Bosch FF. You can follow me as at Kevin Cotillo. And we just want to thank everyone for joining our Sunday swim competition. It was great. We got a lot of participants. We believe we were the first people to fill the 100 spots in our competition. It hasn't been announced yet, but thank you to everyone that showed up and signed up for that. It's gonna be a lot of fun to go through that this season. So we look forward to playing against that. We will be back again. I hope you enjoyed this quick hit format of the Dynasty Wall Street podcast. We'll talk to you soon. And stop.
The league is active now, by the way.
Oh, is it?
I just finally.